Biden has finally taken charge as the 46th President of the United States of America. Well, this ushers in, of course, a new era for the United States, but it would also mean some sort of a shift, perhaps for the better, in its approach, in its foreign policy as far as other countries are concerned. Specifically, what does it mean for India? We know Prime Minister Modi has had good equations with both Donald Trump and, of course, his predecessor Barack Obama. But what does it mean with Joe Biden? So to answer these questions, Noinima Basu is back with us in Government Matters. She, as you know, tracks diplomacy for ThePrint. So you can start sending in your questions for this episode of Government Matters. So Noinima, okay, so this is such a vast sort of a field, open field, but let's first begin specifically about the kind of issues, the friction that we saw between India and US under the Trump era, and how do you see those going forward with Biden as the president? So trade, for instance.
Well, yes. I mean, if you talk about, let's just first talk about the challenges, okay?
Right.
The challenges, be it the Republicans or the Democrat, be it Trump or be it Joe Biden, we've seen it has always been the economic and trade ties, and that is what I believe is going to be in the coming 4 years at least. While we know that the US itself has to, put their house in order and settle many things, we've seen already if the first press conference by the White House has happened. President Biden has signed many executive orders. But if you talk about India, some of the strategic progress that we've made, India and US they've sort of made in terms of Malabar, in terms of Quad, Indo-Pacific, all those will continue. But the challenges again are going to be, as I said, trade. And this time, I think under the Biden administration, yet another area that can possibly come up as a big challenge is that of the climate change. And
right.
That's going to be huge, I believe. Although India has taken a lot of initiatives, Prime Minister Modi has come up with an international solar alliance where we are having many global players. But at the same time, for India to control the emissions probably is going to be a challenge. And that's where we will see, the appointment of, now he's being called as Energy Czar, John Kerry. And the fact that Mr. Kerry is very aware of the Indian priorities. He's been a former Secretary of State. So all those areas are going to be in focus, at least in the near future.
Right. Now, a trade deal between the two countries has been elusive. Do you see that concretizing anytime soon?
Well, as I said, in the first 4 years, I don't think there will be that kind of focus per se, but conversations have already started, is what we are getting to understand. And when I speak with officials, is that USTR, the new US Trade Representative, Catherine Tai, she's already had a conversation with her Indian counterparts. But I don't think immediately the focus will be on a trade agreement. It is to iron out some of the tricky issues that are still very much there. From India's perspective, the GSP, which is the Generalized System of Preferences, is an area where they are expecting the Biden administration to have some kind of positive movement, which can be restoration of the GSP in some form or the other. Or also there's going to be these issues, some of the tricky issues like data localization, okay?
Right.
Then there are all this kind of in terms of the IT and high-tech areas that are going to be primarily focused, at least in the first 1 or 2 years.
All right. So as I mentioned in my introduction, Noinima, the Prime Minister Modi believes in forging personal equations with world leaders, and that's how he's functioned in his first term and in this term. So essentially, he was on a first-name basis with former President Obama and now former President Trump. How important is his equation with Joe Biden going to be, particularly because Prime Minister Modi did endorse Trump's election at that big show.
Yes, true. And that's what the question I was waiting to hear from one of our viewers also is that, see, it has, this is the first time we've seen when an Indian Prime Minister openly sort of endorsing, if I can use that word, when he said, "Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar," and which was again followed by when President Trump was here last February. Having said that, I would feel a little reassured because we've recently heard the new Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, talking about the fact that India has been a bipartisan success story.
Right.
And he in fact said that during his confirmation hearing at the Senate. But then, yes, this is something that the Democrats have also closely watched. It was also, in a way, criticized internally at that point of time, but then they realized that there would be political compulsions. So I don't think that will really hamper the relationship, the bilateral ties per se. But in terms of other areas, as I said, when they actually start focusing on South Asia, especially in India, with China being the main sort of challenge there, as I said, strategically, we are going to be closer, and that's what the hint Biden administration, before it came, it sort of started giving, that their focus will be Indo-Pacific, while they were not using the term, but then they have now appointed somebody who's going to have the designation of an Indo-Pacific coordinator.
Which shows the importance they are laying on the region.
That's right, because let's remember, it was under the Barack Obama administration is when the pivot to Asia, the Asia rebalance policy started, which is like the, you know, the grandfather of Indo-Pacific. So, and President Trump sort of brought it at the forefront. So I think that's very much is going to be there when they start looking at China. But I think going forward, what the Biden administration does in terms of having somebody purely focused on South Asian affairs is what we need to keep a close watch on.
All right. Okay, let's begin with this question from Dev Verma. According to Shekhar sir, the Biden administration will be much more vocal about what India calls its internal matters like the CAA. Do you agree with him? Will he see it to be worth it as it will irritate the Modi government? So we know Shekhar mentioned it in one of the Kadhika.
Yes, of course, and that is, he's absolutely right, Mr. Gupta, when he said that. That is because let's understand that that's where the ethos of the Democratic Party sort of lies, right? And with we've heard that Kamala Harris had, and we know that she spoke about the Kashmir issue, especially on human rights and other things. In this administration, we will have somebody like a Pramila Jayapal also.
Absolutely.
With whom, unfortunately, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar refused to meet. But then, you know, that time the challenges were different. But yes, India will also constantly assert the fact that this is India's internal issues. And I think, and when we also speak with experts, they also come up with the fact that US under Trump era has sort of lost that pedestal to constantly talk about human rights or other issues of other countries. Take a moral high ground. Exactly. So, so that will be a tricky area that will continue to be in focus. But then India is going to say the same thing, which anyway they will also have to do, and we will also have to do.
Okay. Aishwarya Singh, what is the reason for the large number of Indian Americans in Biden's cabinet? Was it really intentional? Should we see it as a positive thing for India? Because they are Americans at the end of the day. Well, yeah, they are Americans at the end of the day.
Well, but yes, I mean, although it is, yes, the euphoria is there that there are so many South Asians in his, you know, close coterie, and the fact that they will be shaping up in their own little manner the foreign policy and the security policy and other things. And also the fact that there are Indian Americans also, you know, of Indian origin. But it is also true, as you rightly said, they are Americans end of the day, and they will be representing the United States, and that's not wrong. I mean, that is what their job is. They will have to do that.
Inclusive cabinet.
Yes, but then at some point, you know, to if you see it in the other way, it can also be a challenge for India because they know India inside out. So, you know, it won't be easy from the Indian policy or Indian political, we've seen that in India there's this concept that, oh, Americans ko kya pata hoga, that kind of a thing will change because you will have people who know inside out. Right. So that will be a positive thing, but that will also be something that we need to be very aware of.
Okay. Abhimanyu Puranik, the biggest question that worries people about Biden is that whether he will be able to take a strong stance against China after the controversy with his son. Do you think that was a big deal and should be worried? So what is going to be the China approach for this administration? Because at this point, we've seen for the last few months, there has been a global backlash against China.
Yes, of course, there's been a global backlash, and the Biden administration has time and again stated and called China aggressive. They have called out Chinese belligerence, and they've done all of that. But let's also not forget that the economic growth and development is back in China, okay? Despite all that has happened in a post-COVID world when all economies are still struggling, right. They are back in the business. And all those talks about US companies going out of China or having a parallel supply chain, we've seen that sort of slowed down, okay? And it's also true that despite all this backlash, yes, that is happening in terms of strategy and other things, but we've seen just before the end of last year how Europeans have gone ahead and signed an investment deal with the Chinese. US-China trade deal of the phase 1 very much remains. Mr. Biden is going to probably make it phase 2, right, and make it further more progressive. That remains to be seen. And we are also going to see the RCEP, the RCEP, or the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, that's going to now also coming to effect by March, April, in which ASEAN, Australia, Japan, China, they're all big players, and they're going to do business and create their own sort of pockets of, this global value chains.
Right.
So while the backlash is there, their understanding is also there that you cannot really get rid of China as a critical business or economic partner. Right. That is where India has to really play that game very smartly.
Okay. Harika Dronawali had a similar question that I asked you earlier, which you've already answered, about Modi's open support for Trump and what that would mean. Dev Verma has a question about trade, which again you've answered. Let's take this question from Balagopal B. Will this power transition change India's approach to Middle East and Russia, given the fact that Biden wants to re-enter JCPOA and Democrats believe in Russian intervention in 2016 elections?
Absolutely. So, yes, with Russia, the focus is going to increase for sure. We've been hearing many things from experts, from the DC circle, so to say that a sanction on the CATSA waiver is not going to be easy for India to get under the Biden administration when it tries to procure the S-400 missiles. So Russia is going to be primarily in the focus, right? And also with Indo-Pacific and other things. We've seen how Russia calls it an evil design designed to divide the world and things like that. So, and the Biden administration has stated many a times that yes, Russia is going to be their focus. So that's going to be a challenge, of course, for India as well, because Russia is one of our traditional and old partner. Also on Iran, yes, there are, the Biden administration has made it very clear that they're going to come back to the JCPOA or the Iran nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. However, it won't be easy to bring Iran back to the deal because now they have, they've heard what and seen what President Trump had done. And so they've also started increasing their uranium enrichment levels. And they've stated that, when the JCPOA was signed, it should have been so much sacrosanct that no player would have had, really walked out like that. Correct. The way President Trump did. So to bring back that confidence within them, to bring Iran back, to have them come back to the negotiating table is going to be the first big hurdle that the Biden administration will have to cross. Then probably, again, the JCPOA will come back to the old form.
Right. Okay. Viren Parekh has a similar question. It's related to the Middle East. Or will Middle East peace continue deals continue under Biden?
Well, if deals in the sense we've seen how the Middle East is sort of also reorganizing themselves. We've seen under President Trump, former US president, that the Abraham Accords had happened. Now Qatar is also back with the Saudis. So over there, the dynamics are also changing. However, the Biden administration will have a lot of, expert hands on these issues, and how they sort of steer that, what they talk about these agreements. These are too early days to sort of say something positively. But yes, whatever they do in that area also has an impact for India, because that is how largely things will be playing out. And let's not forget, President Biden has also spoken about how he wants to have a democracy summit where all the democratic governments and they will be invited. There'll be a summit between all the democratic country leaders. So that is something also will probably chalk out a lot of these strategies in region specific, how you would look at all these areas.
Okay. Mohit Verma, how does having Kamala Harris as vice president impact India-US relations? So that's been one of the big stories of this election.
Well, that's true. But again, I would again like to reiterate the point that end of the day, they are Americans. Yes, she also knows India in and out. And the fact that end of the day, she's the vice president of the United States.
Absolutely.
And she's been quite vocal about some of the issues like Kashmir and human rights. And I think she'll continue to be so. However, yes, it feels good to think that, yes, you have somebody of Indian origin at the White House. That might help, depending the way that the Indian government also steers this relationship now.
Okay, I'll take one last question. I'm not sure who this is from. I don't have the name, but should we expect the Biden administration to prioritize environmental issues and also target governments like India or the other BRICS nations for their respective records on environment and carbon emissions? So, unlike Donald Trump, who was largely dismissive of a lot of, environmental issues, this is going to be a stark change.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, yes, he walked out of the climate change, President Trump, but he did say, at the fag end of his administration, that the air in India is filthy. And we all know that. So that sort of will weigh in also on this administration. We've heard Mr. Blinken again in his hearing to the Senate has spoken about how India is fast catching up with China when it comes to emissions. So, and we will have somebody like Mr. Kerry looking at the climate change aspect. So from that aspect, the pressure on India is going to be huge.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Noenema. This was a very useful conversation to try and understand how the Biden administration is going to impact India-US ties. I hope you all got answers to your questions. I apologize if there are some questions we couldn't take because of paucity of time. But, we have a live this evening at 6:30 where our editor-in-chief, Shekhar Gupta, will answer any questions that you might have. This is a Hindi live that he does once a week. So the questions perhaps you can also direct at him. And
yes.
The big story today is the regime change in the United States. So look forward to that live this evening, Noenema. Thank you for watching Government Matters. Do keep subscribing to our YouTube channel.